Okay, why don't we get started? So I mentioned before, each team will present for 15 minutes like they did in the morning. The Q&As, and I'll go suppress to 10 minutes, and I'll monitor the time. As the clock here will start promptly. In terms of the final winners, what I will do is after all 5 teams have presented, I will sequester the group of judges in the private room, and they will, when they arrive at a decision, they'll come up with a ranking of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And as a big treat, one of our judges, which we'll keep confidential, actually did the deal. So the person will come up before we announce the final winners to actually talk about what really happened in that transaction, and before we announce the final winners and give the big checks and everything. So, all right. So anyway, I will start the first group, Sequoia by Borealis, and this has a very annoying beep when it goes to 15, but I'll come up with that. Ready, steady, go.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Daniel Foch. I am joined here by my colleagues,
Justin Aguilar, Lorraine,
Lindsay Lippert,
Chris Dines, and Sean Atkinson.
and together we make up Borealis Capital Advisors. We are here today to present to you a consultation on a development opportunity that your fund has, which is referred to as the Sequoia. First, taking a look at the site itself, you can see a rendering of a potential site development in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. It's located on Main Street in downtown Redwood City, in the county of San Mateo, just south of San Francisco, moving into the Silicon Valley in the heart of a booming tech industry.
So as Dan mentioned, the site's downtown Redwood City. It's within their comprehensive urban development plan. The site itself is 1 acre in size, and it's currently housing a 13,000 square foot office building, which is vacant and will be demolished upon any construction. The site's approved for either office or multifamily residential uses, and it can hold up to 48 condo units and 91 underground parking spaces. If the fund decides to take on this project, they'd be taking on a partner by the name of Lester Kaepernick, who would retain a 10% equity share in the project. He currently owns 100% of the site and is very emotionally attached to the site. The fund has $96 million available to it at the moment, and typically has an equity sweet spot for this type of development of between $20 and $50 million. And an IRR in excess of 15%. But for this project in particular, we're targeting an IRR in excess of 25%, given the relative IRRs of the other projects that the fund is currently considering. And they usually require a 3 to 5 year holding period for this type of asset.
So in taking a look at the asset itself, the market that it exists within, and the partners in the project, we can proceed to say that we would recommend that your fund proceeds with the investment of this project. And as my colleagues are about to outline, we have identified the highest and best use of the site as a condominium development. We will need a well-structured deal to incentivize the partner to move us through the promote structure and ensure that we meet both our returns and our timeline for the project. And we'll need to create a project that meets the market demand of the area, which my colleagues are about to outline through a market analysis.
Okay, regional market overview. So the site's located about 27 miles from San Francisco. That's one of the top development areas in the United States. ULI rated it in the top 3 markets for both commercial and multifamily residential, and in the top 5 markets for for-sale home building development. Last year, the GDP increased by 8.75%, interest rates dropped by 0.85% to 3.66%, and employment increased by 5%, so these are all great signs.
This chart shows a graphical representation of the 3 different asset classes that are currently being considered for this particular property. The per square foot construction costs are in the range of 40 to 60% of the per square foot sales cost, showing strong profit margins all across the board, but especially in the condo subclass. Another key takeaway from this graph is a significantly slower absorption period for apartment buildings. At 12.2 months, it will take approximately twice as long for the market to absorb apartment units than it would for the other 2 asset classes.
Okay, Redwood City has a population of approximately 80,000. Median age is around 35. Average income $77,000, and this is expected to grow by 3.7% through 2015. This wealthy area is fueled by a booming tech industry. Redwood's headquartered some great companies such as Electronics Arts, Oracle Corp, and Kaiser Permanente. Dan's going to discuss how our market analysis plays into our strategy.
So in starting off our strategy, first we needed to decide whether or not we wanted to invest or pass on this property. There are a couple reasons for both arguments. Firstly, it's a highly emotional project, and we're a little bit risk sensitive over the 3 different asset classes that we could develop the final project into. Furthermore, the condo development that we decided to move forward with is difficult to find financing in this market, and we also needed to make sure to weigh the opportunity against the other opportunities that were available to the fund to make sure that we were looking out for the fund's best interests. But looking on the more positive side of things, we can get into this asset at a really fair price. We have a motivated partner looking at the more positive side to his sentimentality, and that adds a little bit of a malleability to the deal structure. Furthermore, the deal that we have structured meets the fund's criteria on both timeline and return measures, and the market in Redwood City is just south of the fund's current holdings in San Francisco, and we think it's a great segue into moving closer to Silicon Valley and the tech market as a whole.
Another part of our recommended strategy for the Sequoia property is to pursue a LEED certification at a silver level. The additional benefits associated with a LEED property will allow you to capture the large population of young, environmentally conscious professionals in this area, as the region has shown a strong commitment to sustainability. This decision will be mutually beneficial for you as investors, as well as for prospective owners. Owners of these condo units would see continuous benefits all throughout, such as lower operating and maintenance costs and increased health benefits that are associated with LEED properties' superior air quality. This appeal to consumers would transfer over to your investor returns, as the condo units would be sold at a faster rate and at a higher price. Overall, we believe that there is a great potential in this market for this type of product, and we highly recommend capitalizing on it.
Marketing plan. Redwood City is a highly sought after location. It's a 5-mile commute from Silicon Valley. We're building luxury units. They're going to be placed at the top end of the market. They're going to be LEED certified, and this is going to appeal to our target demographic of young professionals.
So part of our strategy is to make sure that the numbers work, and that starts with a solid budget. So the original budget proposed by the developer had a number of issues with it that we're going to address. Firstly, with the hard costs, he assessed the land value at $12 million. Based on land comparables in the area, we actually found that the value was more like $6 million. We put that in there. Additionally, it didn't account for going underground for the 91 parking spaces, so we added about $1.8 million to account for that. The additional cost of going green with LEED, we added 5% per square foot to account for that. And just to be conservative, we added a 5% contingency on all hard costs. Additionally, the original developer assumed that he could build a site for $200 per square foot, which we thought was fairly liberal. So we put that up to $220 per square foot. Looking at the soft costs, as my colleagues will mention to you, we anticipate going into this deal all equity. So any costs associated with loan or interest payments were removed from the budget. And we also decreased the management fee by the developer by 33%, given that, as my colleagues will touch on, he's demanding a fairly aggressive promo structure, which we're actually going to go with. So now we're going to get into the numbers.
So in order to assess the investment potential for the 3 different asset classes that we could develop the property, being condominium, apartments, and office space, we made a couple of assumptions to facilitate our pro forma analysis. The first assumption is that the negotiations with the development partner have been ongoing, and the site is at a shovel-ready basis, so we're ready to begin construction immediately. The second assumption is that the below market rate units are going to be absorbed immediately once we receive an occupancy permit from the city. Similarly, we will be pre-selling units, so 50% of the market rate units will be pre-sold up until the point where we receive the occupancy permit. And last, we've split up our construction costs straight line over 4 quarters to total up the development period.
All right, so our deal includes a 4-tier promo structure. That acts as an incentive to align the developer's end goal with that of your funds. In the first tier of the promo structure, your fund is in a preferred position where you receive 100% of the cash flow, up until you receive full return of capital and a 10%, either greater of a 10% IRR or 1.25 equity multiple. In the second tier, the partner is given the opportunity to achieve the same return measures, and any excess cash flow into the third tier is split 50-50 between the 2 partners. This is a significant promo for the developing partner, considering he only provides 10% of the equity. And any residual that makes it out of the third tier is split at 75-25 for an even greater promo to the developing partner. I'll now walk you through a visual representation of our cash flows and pro forma. As you can see, we have split the quarterly straight line payment construction costs over our 1-year expected construction period. as well as assume that we will pre-sell 50% of the units during this 1 year of construction and receive the full amount of payment in Q3 2013 at $16.5 million. In the following quarter, we'll receive the additional $9 million outstanding capital for your fund, as well as the $2 million return on that capital, equaling the 1.25 equity multiple, with a small amount of $100,000 falling into the second tier. In the final quarter of the project, you'll see a full return of the developer's capital, as well as his return of 1.25 equity multiple, and the remaining $1.7 million will be split at 50-50 between the two partners. I'll now hand it back to Sean for some investment metrics.
So after looking at the post-waterfall cash flows, we're looking at a couple of key investment metrics, namely being the equity multiple and the internal rate of return. So as you can see in blue, the equity multiple for the base case of condo development with an all-equity buy-in is 1.4 with an internal rate of return of 34.9. Now, what may stand out immediately is how much higher the returns are when we leverage the property and we put debt on it, but I'd like to outline why we think going all cash is the best way to proceed. First of all, there's not a lot of lenders providing cash for condo development, so the time it's going to take in order to find a lender to provide us with funds to begin construction is going to delay our beginning of the project. Secondly, as Chris mentioned, the fund has a $20 to $50 million equity sweet spot, so again, by putting debt on the property, it's going to pull us out of that sweet spot. Typically, we'd be looking at a 50% loan-to-cost lending amount, which would mean about $13.5 million in equity into the project and a $15 million loan. We then went back to the base case and we looked at a couple of different sensitivities to assess market and project risk. In the market risk scenario, we looked at what would happen if our absorption extended to 4 quarters instead of the 3 that we had forecasted, as well as what would happen with a 10% decrease in the sale price of the condominiums. So this dropped our equity multiple to 1.2 and our internal rate of return to 16.7. We then went back to the base case and we looked at what would happen with a project risk, namely where we would extend construction to 5 quarters, incur an additional expense, and increase the construction cost by 10% to about $250 per square foot. So the negatives from this scenario weren't as bad as the market risk, where we were still able to get an equity multiple of 1.3 and an internal rate of return of 25.8.
And no strategy would be complete without comparing it to the other opportunities that the fund has with its capital. So firstly, looking at our highest and best use of the condominium development for this site, and then the other 2 internal opportunities, which are the office project and the apartment project, we can see that at 16.2% IRR and a negative 8.6% IRR respectively for the office and apartment projects, the condominium project grossly outperforms them and is definitely the best way to proceed with the site-specific option. Now, looking externally at the other opportunities available to the fund in Paris and New York City, with IRRs of 21% and 24% respectively, we can also see that the condominium project that we have for this site in Redwood City grossly outperforms those opportunities as well. So, through the analysis that my colleagues have presented to you today, we would recommend that your fund invests in the Sequoia project under the conditions that, firstly, the site is located in close proximity to Silicon Valley and San Francisco, a booming tech industry, and what ULI and PricewaterhouseCoopers have called the second-ranked market in the United States this year. The premier site strategy that we have created for this site, it captures the market demand in that area. And furthermore, the well-structured deal that we have proposed incentivizes the partner to move us through our promote structure so that your fund meets both returns and the timeline for the project. Thank you very much for your time. Do you have any questions?
All right, now we have 10 minutes for any questions from the judges.
Well, maybe I'm missing something, but where do you have in here your assumptions for the condo sale prices?
Sorry, I can touch on that. Or actually, no, go ahead.
Okay, so essentially what we did is basically we looked at the, within the context of the information that was provided, the median sale price was around $400, but what we, or $400 per square foot. So what we did is actually we looked at the comparables mainly from Palo Alto, which is closer to the Silicon Valley. They had a much higher sale price per square foot, and the quality of the condominiums in that market were a lot closer to what we were expecting to build this market, or the condominiums in Redwood to. And so essentially what we did is we adjusted based on the Palo Alto price to assess our pricing for the Sequoia.
We did some external market analysis with the Redwood City condominium market, and then also discounted the Palo Alto condominium market comparables that were provided to us in the information. And we came to a conclusion that $400 per square foot sale price was,
Just to add to that, that's actually the higher end for that market because A is luxury site and it's LEED Silver certified. So
What were your costs per square foot and the sales price, average price per square foot?
The cost per square foot under our base case was $220 per square foot. And then the sale price? Well, the sale price, the median, it was all relative to the different kinds of condominium developments because there's the 1 bedroom, the 2 bedroom, and the 3 bedroom. So as far as our average price, it was $525, but I think auto.
And the $220 construction cost is actually excluding the parkade in the basement. So that is just the three levels of construction where 2 of them are wooden structure.
Yeah, I meant your overall cost, all in, land, everything cost per square foot versus the sales price per square foot, which you just said was $5.
Yeah, the sale price was $525. I don't.
It'd be approximately $235. In the way that we set it up, we have the parkade as a separate item on the development budget, not based on the function of the 220 square foot, which we had added 10% to from the information that was provided from the original development budget.
Nice slides, you guys did a great job presenting. How do you know whether he does the deal at $6 million? Is he looking for more money? And have you done a break-even analysis upon which you get to a certain threshold and still factor in the IRR or whatever your return basis is that you consider still doing the investment?
So yeah, initially he had forecasted the land to be worth about $12 million, but based on our comparables, we thought 6 was a little bit more realistic. Now, one of the actual benefits to him to actually doing the deal based on a $6 million land sale price and keeping the 90-to-10 equity ratio in the joint venture the same is that because Roar is the preferred equity provider. By going off a $12 million land sale, it would mean that Roar would be putting in about 10.8 in equity. And so that basically means that because the cash flows for the project are fixed based on the sale price, we're guaranteed more money earlier on. And really where the developer is going to make most of his return is from the residual cash flows that enter into the 3rd tier. So basically, by us establishing a $6 million sale price, he, in fact, there's a greater chance of the cash flows making it into the 3rd tier.
What if he says no? Was there a threshold? What if he says no to $6 million and he wants 8, 9, 10? Where's the point of inflection where you guys still say do the deal? It sounds like you're saying don't do the deal unless you get it for 6, or
That is the way we're
so
proceeding with
you wouldn't do it for anything more than 6.
essentially we're presenting you with a way to make the deal work with the numbers that you need to meet, the returns that you need to meet, and the timeline.
So that's what you solved for. You said, okay, this at $6 million it works.
I'm not following the math. I'm on appendix I, and it looks like your total sales income is $35 million. Sales income, and then I thought your construction costs were $35 million.
So the total the way that we separated it is basically because the development partner is contributing the land. The way that we were looking at it was as if he's contributing the land, we're still giving him a 10% cash basis on the value of the land, so a $600,000 equity fund. But essentially, he's contributing the land to us almost as an incentive to be able to join up within the partnership and to get the access to our equity. So the physical outflow of cash for the project isn't $35 million. It's actually just the direct development costs that are going in. So the direct costs from the 4 quarters to actually physically build the asset. That's the way we've forecasted our sales on.
So you're getting the land for $0 then?
Essentially, yeah. But then he's also getting the access to the partnership and to our equity.
What was it? Yeah, he was supposed to get $12 million in cash in a partnership. Now he's just getting a partnership because you had to put more money in.
He's getting 600,000.
He's getting the 600,000, and then because we feel we have brought an extremely conservative construction budget, he gets the half the proceeds of any savings that come from the savings on construction cost, which we believe we will come in under budget. We don't see any of that return, and we're looking out for your return. So if he takes the deal, we're risk mitigating for you, not for him so much, but he has another opportunity for cash flow in that decision.
Sounds like he'd be better off just selling his land and walking away.
He doesn't want to sell it because he's emotionally invested. He has promised his community that he will develop develop this property as residential property. So between apartment and condo, we have come up with condo as being the best option for him to do that.
But you've now asked him to take his entire land, put it all at risk for a small profit at the end, which is worth less than the land that he's throwing into the deal.
What does he get at the, like, how many dollars does he get out of this promote, this deal? He gets 600,000 capital down, and then through your splits with a $5 million to sell out, how many dollars go to the developer?
I believe it's $3.5 million out of the current promo structure without any savings on the construction budget whatsoever. And so the $3.5 million comes in as his return on equity.
So he's taking a $9 million loss on his $12 million.
Well,
Is that understanding that correctly?
just because he thinks it's $12 million doesn't mean it's actually $12 million.
No, but I mean, he's got a loan on the property, right? We're assuming that it's $12 million.
He's got a loan of $1.5 million.
He's got a loan of 1.5.
Yes.
What is he, how is he paying that off? Are you paying that off?
No, we have assumed that is his responsibility, but prior to entering into the JV, so it falls on his side of his IRR
But you didn't
calculation.
give him any money to pay it off?
Yeah, you gave him 600,000.
Can you bring up, can you bring up J, appendix J?
No, you give nothing.
I don't know, it's appendix J, it looks like you gave him $5.5 million.
You can't build unless you pay off the loan.
So what's the outflow for Roar's perspective from day one, the -5.4?
So basically, so what we're doing, in the first quarter of 2012, as part of giving the land to us, we're basically responsible for 90% of the land value. So we basically have to contribute the $5.4 million to the development of the project. Before he puts in any more capital into the project, we're responsible for paying off the 90% of the land value first. So basically, we're going to have
getting that.
the JV is getting it. We're basically committing. We're saying before you spend any more money, we will put in that $5.4 million.
Why are you putting it in there? It's just a waste of money. You said it's not going to him and it's not going to you. Why are you putting it in there?
For construction costs.
Complete the project.
You're not using it for construction costs. You said you're using it for land costs.
No. It's a function of him giving us the land. So basically, obviously we recognize that he's contributed an asset to the property, and so basically,
Market cost and stuff.
But you don't have an actual cost in quarter zero, right?
No. The 5.4 that's getting spent out in Q3 of 2012 is going to be to the actual development of the project, because the quarter by quarter over the 4 months, over the 4 quarters, the quarterly expense using the straight line method is approximately $7 million. And so basically we're saying that before you spend another dime, we will spend the first 5.4, and then thereafter the difference between the 5.4 and the 7 million is split on the promo, or on the equity split in the JV. So we would cover 90% of the expenses thereafter, and you would take the other 10.
All right, you're shovel ready and ready to go in the ground. So what kind of a construction contract? I'm wondering, how do you expect to see the construction costs of these out?
Sorry, what was the question?
If you're shovel ready and ready to go in the ground,
Yeah.
that assumes a certain kind of cost structure and construction contract. How do you expect to see any savings in your construction costs?
Well, realistically, the deal is built to incentivize him to bring us the savings. So through the promote structure, realistically, because he's the expert in the development side of things, we have structured the deal in such a manner that the construction cost savings will bring him a better return as well as us. So.
Did you run the IRR analysis, assuming if you paid $6 million for the land, what IRR came out from that?
If we were to pay $6 million in cash,
Yes.
no, we didn't.
You're essentially paying 600,000 for the land.
So
No, they paid nothing for the land.
We'll give you, he gets a calendar.
But they didn't.
Okay, that's 10 minutes of question. Safe by the buzzer.